On today's podcast, the experts share how long you should really be using skincare to see long-lasting results.
Time is a lot longer than people think. Even for a prescription medication, you need to give it 3 months.
The Tweakments that they really recommend.
I love a sprinkle of Botox, just around the forehead. Quite good for me. Just take the edge off.
And the one piece of skincare advice that everyone should know.
Throw away the mag glass. That magnifying glass, just smash it, throw it away.
Don't forget to subscribe. We've got a great episode coming up. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to the Sherlock's podcast with me, Sherri Andew. We have a great episode in store for you today as it's another Black Beauty special and we are talking all about skin. I'm joined by two heavyweights in the industry, so we'll be discussing problem skin, product recommendations, treatments, tweakments, and more. I am joined by the award-winning medical consultant with a special interest in dermatology and founder of the Ayodele Medical Clinic, Dr. Ifeoma Ejikeme.
Hello.
Hello. And also award-winning skincare and aesthetics professional and founder of the Black Skin Directory, Dija Ayodele. Hi, ladies.
Hi.
How are we?
Very good.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, we've got a lot to discuss today. And I just wanted to start with the fact that I don't know how you both feel, but it seems to be that there is more skincare advice out there than ever before. And partly thanks to things like social media, industry trends, etc. There's a lot of information. So I'm so excited to talk to you two because you are the real industry experts to filter out some of the advice that might not be on point, and let's get your advice. Would you agree that people these days are taking their skin health more seriously?
I definitely think so. I think it was roundabout when we were all indoors, spending a lot of time looking at our faces, wearing less makeup, looking at Zoom for way too long, and having little to do. I think that created a lot of people looking at their faces probably for the first time in detail and relying less on makeup or anything else to cover up. And so when it's just you and your skin, there's nowhere to hide.
Yes.
And so looking up online to find solutions for skin problems like hyperpigmentation, redness and texture. And I think that's when things really change for lots of people.
Before COVID, we didn't actually take time to stop for anything really in our lives. Self-care and all that sort of stuff was just so way down on the list, and having that bit of extra time during the pandemic actually allowed people to stop and think for a second. And I think that has continued, just down to even things like what people are using for their skin, their product choices, what they're willing to spend. I think all of that has come much more into focus. And with the advent of AI as well and ChatGPT for skincare, I think, it continues to change and people continue to be interested. Yeah.
It's such a fascinating industry because there's so much innovation. There are so many brands and voices.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to condense what we're going to talk about in one podcast. Really. You always do 10 different podcasts.
Yeah, you could do a 10-part series.
We really could. So I guess we're going to focus on skincare and skin health, particularly for diverse women, black and brown women, etc. And as well as the trends, it feels like people are also spending more money on skincare and skin health. Is that something that you've also noticed?
In various ways, yes and no. I think it's very easy when you work within the skincare industry, you work within the skincare world, to kind of think that people are spending a lot of money all the time. But essentially, only a certain small proportion of people are. I think a lot of people are wanting to find hardworking products that are what I call sensible prices. And I also encourage that because I want people to use products they can continue to afford to repurchase, because skincare is based on consistency, I'm sure you'd agree with me. And if you are splurging on skincare one month and the next month you can't afford it, you're not really building consistent habits. So I think that when it comes to spending, I think it's something we have to unpack and look at it in a bit more detail, because I think some of the stats that are out there as well as to what black and brown women spend on skincare, I definitely think are outdated and could do with a little bit more interrogation.
Well, speaking of which, I know we were talking about this before we started recording. I was saying, according to one study, black women in the UK spend 6 times more money than their white counterparts on skincare, hair care and cosmetic things in general. So you think that might be a little bit outdated?
Yeah, that's not a stat I support because number one, it's American. It's from Nielsen. So it's an American stat. So it doesn't quite translate. When you we do this thing of Black Skin Directory where we look at stats and we overlay them with more data. And when we look at data, for example, from the ONS, we know that the average Black family earns less than £600 a week before tax, which is the lowest in the country. So when we look at that stat, we interrogate it to say, okay, who are these Black women? How many of them are there in terms of percentages? Considering that Black people are only 2.4 million in this country, according to the last census, how many of them? What are they spending? Where are they spending it on? Because the vast majority of the population, white, Black, pink, or blue, and also the vast majority of the Black population, sit within C1 occupational standards category, which means there's actually not that money to play about with, especially in this economy as well. So when you overlay the economy on as well. So when we hear stats like that, number one, when was it published? Where was it published? Who is it speaking about? And so we always encourage brands to just break it down a little bit, go deeper into that stat, just so you can get a more accurate picture of whether or not that stat applies to the work you're doing or the product you're presenting.
I think that's interesting, though, and I completely agree with Dija. And one thing I would say is there is some truth in that, though.
For sure.
In that Black and brown women do spend a lot of money on hair and skincare products. The second question is why?
Yes, indeed. That's
why?
Yes.
Because there are not that many products that really adequately suit the needs of Black and brown skin, and certainly hair. So you can't just go to the shops, buy the £2.60 or the £2.50 shampoo and it does what it's supposed to do. You'll buy that one, it doesn't work. So you buy another one, it doesn't work. And then you buy another one and then it doesn't work. So I think lots of people end up buying lots of products in an attempt to effectively get to the root of what they're trying to treat. Is that pigmentation? If you have a brown spot, you can try 26 different products on the market. The majority of them will do nothing for your skin and perhaps even cause other issues. So I think buying lots of products is probably true. But why are we having to buy lots of products? Why are we having to jump around and try so many products? Because there aren't lots of products that adequately suit the needs of the consumers, the Black and brown consumers.
That's so interesting because it is perhaps quantity over quality. If you're trying 4 cleansers and only one will work, you've wasted that amount of money.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think it's a core group that are spending lots as opposed to everybody spending lots.
And I think it says a lot about the education that we as an industry provide to consumers, that we can have one group of consumers. And I think this happens actually probably across all demographics as well and all ethnicities and whatnot, where we have groups of people who the industry as a whole hasn't spoken to in a way that they understand. So therefore they are, Sally in Doncaster is buying 4 cleansers as well, maybe for different reasons to Fumi in London. But essentially there's a lot of what I call skincare sprawl happening where people are just buying lots of products. You open people's cabinets and like everything's just falling out. And for me, that's what I call, this is the sprawl. Of what's going on. So I think it says a lot about the education we provide as an industry.
And you touched on the Black Skin Directory. So for anyone who's not aware what that is, Dija, can you explain a little bit about what that is?
Sure. So Black Skin Directory was a platform that we set up about 7 years ago now to help Black and brown women navigate the skincare industry. Whether it be you're looking for a cleanser or you're looking for a practitioner, you're looking for an aesthetic professional. And it's a free to use platform where you can go and, be more guided with the information, and we have experts provide the commentary and the quotes and all that sort of stuff. So again, it's somewhere you can go that has been written by people who actually care and are knowledgeable and are experts in their field. And
it's so important that something like that exists now because when I was younger, as someone coming from a mixed race background, if my mum, who was white, could have read that, that would have solved so many problems. So I think it's such a
I always say to people that white mums with mixed race and mixed heritage kids are one of our biggest stakeholders. People always assume that, it's just Black women. And I say, you'd be surprised how many white mums
they're learning too.
have a massive role to play in Black Skin Directory. That it's yes, at the heart, yes, it was set up for Black women, but the stakeholders are diverse. And
I guess things like that are not just for consumers, they should be for brands, people who are in the rooms making decisions about products who are going to be for diverse people.
For sure.
So what about some of the unique challenges that people with deeper skin tones face? What are some of the main concerns that some of your clients come to you with?
So my patients come with all sorts of concerns. I think there's some that are unique to black skin, and then there's some that you see in all skin types. I would say acne and hyperpigmentation is something that I see a lot of, and the two are intertwined because sometimes you can treat the acne, or the acne has been treated, but the hyperpigmentation persists. And this can be extremely crippling socially and for your self-esteem because there are not a lot of options out there. And so we have at Ayodele Medical Clinic a lot of different treatments for it. Some that are over-the-counter skincare, some that are prescription, and then we have chemical peels, we have all sorts of lasers. And every single device that we have in our practice, we have an option that's safe and effective for black skin. So even very deep treatments like CO2 lasers, which is rarely done on black skin, we do this routinely in our practice.
Oh, sorry, and why is that? Why is that not routinely done on black skin?
So a CO2 laser is a very powerful laser, arguably one of the most powerful lasers. And CO2 evaporates water in the skin. And if you think back, those old school CO2 lasers were fully ablative lasers, so they remove all the skin. If you're skin type 1, like Irish, always burns, never tans, then you can take the whole skin off. It will come back with no pigment and everything will be great. But if you take off all the skin on a melanin-rich skin, then the pigments can come back mottled. A fully ablative laser is a no-no for black and mixed heritage skin. But we've now moved on in technology. Now we have fractional ablative laser, which basically takes tiny microscopic, about 1/10 or 100th the size of a hair, tiny microscopic elements of the skin, which are so small they're less than a skin cell thick in some cases. And it means that it doesn't cause a lot of trauma to the skin. So you can therefore use a treatment like this in the right hands, once prepared well, to treat even severe acne scars, keloid scars, deep textural issues in the skin on black skin, which is brilliant, but you have to know how to do it. It's something that is caveated. Don't go any old place to do fractional ablative laser. It's hugely caveated. You have to be prepped. You have to be extremely carefully prepped and really handheld through the process, and afterwards it has to be excellent aftercare to make sure you get great results. But it's nice to know that it's possible. Like if you've got pitting ice pick scars and you want them treated, or you have a big scar from a surgery and you want it treated, there are options that are available. It's not just having to cover it up if that's not your choice.
Thank goodness the technology has come on such a long way. And you both mentioned hyperpigmentation.
Yeah.
So I feel like some people know what it is. Is there a difference between that and a sunspot, for example? So what is the definition of hyperpigmentation?
Hyperpigmentation essentially means a collection of pigment. That's all it means. It doesn't tell you what it's caused by. It's something that you see. It's not a diagnosis. It's just a state of skin. A dark spot is hyperpigmentation. So that could be a sunspot. That could be an acne scar. That could be a medical condition where the pigment comes through the skin, like melasma, where you have this symmetrically asymmetric butterfly-like looking rash. So there are lots of things that cause hyperpigmentation. And this is really important. Like if you have pigment, you're going to have hyperpigmentation. If I look at my face, I have hyperpigmentation. My hands, I have hyperpigmentation. It's part and parcel of having melanin-rich skin. But it doesn't mean you always have to tolerate it. Yes. You know, if you have a big brown spot underneath your eye and you don't want it to be there, it doesn't have to be there if you don't want it to be there. So it's about knowing what it is. So hyperpigmentation doesn't tell you what it is. So first we have to understand what's the cause of it, stop the cause of it, and then treat it.
Can you like diagnose yourself? If you're looking in the mirror, can you see, okay, I've got some hyperpigmentation, it's from X, Y, or Z. Do you think supermarket or high street products can help tackle these things? I always am a bit aware.
I think you can do a bit of both.
Okay.
There are some very, I would say, simple, inverted commas, simple types of hyperpigmentation. Like, for example, I know that, and for most people with dark skin issue, if you get a spot of any kind of inflammation, it's going to leave a dark mark. So I think that's a simple level 1 type of hyperpigmentation that you can diagnose yourself, you can see, and you know you're going to get what we call post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. If you have eczema and you've had it for a long time, you've had it all your life, you've grown up with it, you know that it makes your skin a little bit darker because whether you've been scratching or anything like that, it is a type of pigmentation. I think there's enough information out there right now that most people know that if, for example, they have melasma, especially when you think about the kind of symmetrical pattern of it, most people might, if they're clued up in skin in some way. But I think there are other types of hyperpigmentation that if you have no clue, rhyme or reason why it's turned up, that is not something you should diagnose yourself, and you really should go and see a medical professional. I do remember, I think I might have been with you actually, on a panel where someone said about hyperpigmentation on the back of their neck, and then somebody else in the audience started giving advice, and me and you looked at each other like, no, because that can be a sign of a medical condition. So that's something you should go and get checked out by someone. So not everything is, you can just look in the mirror or look online and you'll find something. You do have some you have to go and see a professional for. And secondly, can you use high street products, drugstore products to a certain extent? I always say to clients, how bothered are you by this? Because that tells me the extent that they're willing to go, or also it can reveal the extent of what they're happy to spend. Because there are some very good, decent products right now on the high street that you can use, to treat tier 1 post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. You've had a spot, you want it to fade. But if you wanted to fade faster, you might want to go and see a professional, because they may be able to give you things that are slightly stronger and handhold you through the process and do treatments like chemical peels or lasers and that sort of thing. So there are some good options, and if you use, there are reputable sites you can go to that can give you the information you need. I think one of the problems, when you asked the question earlier about, what are the problems we see people of colour facing when it comes to skincare, the actual skincare issue problem. But I think one of the biggest problems we have is just the mishmash of information. I think that's a massive problem where people just don't know, and I have people who come to me and they'll say, and I read this somewhere and I read that somewhere,
all conflicting,
and I'm just like, you need to pick one ministry and listen to that ministry.
Dija always says that you have to have
pick one church.
I love that. One church.
You can't be hopping about. So I think whilst yes we have the issue of hyperpigmentation or acne and all that kind of stuff, we also have the issue of information. And I think that generally if people had good information they could access and weren't bombarded all the time, which I mean, I don't know how we solve the problem of being bamboozled and bombarded, but they would be able to understand products more.
Also, when we talk about hyperpigmentation, I think it's really important people aren't afraid of it.
Okay.
I think lots of people are afraid of hyperpigmentation, both practitioners and the general public, because you think, something bad's happened, I have to fix it, I have to cure it. And I have a really good relationship with hyperpigmentation, because hyperpigmentation, your body's an organ, your skin is an organ, it's telling you something. So it's just that we're not listening. So when hyperpigmentation turns up, your body is trying to tell you something. Is it friction? Is it trauma? Is it inflammation? Is it an allergy? Is it irritation? Is it a spot that you just won't stop picking? It's trying to tell you something. And your job is to be curious as opposed to be annoyed at it, to try and understand, what is it trying to tell you? Your body is trying to tell you something. Sometimes people get generalized hyperpigmentation and are trying to treat the hyperpigmentation. No, your body is trying to tell you something. Let's find out what your body is trying to tell you first. And I think when you start thinking of hyperpigmentation like that, it becomes almost friendly.
Yes, less of a battle, more of like what can this tell me?
It's your body is telling you something so important. It's now it has to shout at you because you weren't listening. So when you start thinking about it like that, it's being curious, like, what am I doing? Is it my watch that keeps rubbing and my band is just too tight? Is it that this hairband that I'm wearing just keeps rubbing? I'm like, it's just too tight. And I do have a headache from it. But I just keep wearing this band every night.
Because it looks good.
It looks good. Or this wig that I keep wearing and the glue is just irritating my forehead, but it looks good. Your body's been telling you something that you didn't want to hear. And if you now listen to it and you stop wearing that glue, or you change it, or you move it in a certain way, it takes a while. 3 to 6 months later, it's gone. But it was telling you something. Our bodies have this incredible mechanism, pigment, to tell you loads of different messages.
That's so interesting to like work with it, and it's going to tell you something about your body. And I think we see it, well, I don't know about other people, but I definitely see it as something that needs to be fixed. When actually I'm like, okay, but why is this happening? And then perhaps try and fix the root problem.
Root cause.
The root cause, exactly. So interesting. Okay, so you've mentioned a few common mistakes that you see people making. Too much advice or too much of this. What are some of the common skincare mistakes that you see some of your clients making? What are some big no-nos that you don't like?
One of the big no-nos is product hopping.
Okay, yeah.
Using a product, not giving it long enough, thinking it doesn't work, then trying another one, not giving it long enough, then moving on to another one, and getting into a cycle where now I've got these 15 products. They're all good products. I've been told that these are good products, but they're not working for me. And sometimes it's like, let's just pare everything back, go back to what your skin is, again, telling you, is it dry, is it irritated, is it sensitive, what are your core goals for your skin? Understanding that, looking at the products and saying, okay, let's take this out, take this out, take this out, and let's give this some proper time. And time is a lot longer than people think. You know, even for a prescription medication, you need to give it 3 months. So it's a long time.
Yeah.
So for an over-the-counter that isn't as strong as a prescription, you know it has to take at least 12 weeks, at least. As long as your skin is not saying, get this thing off me, you know, give it long enough for it to have its result. And the second thing is, when you have a slight shift in your skin, so for example, skin is doing generally quite well, you get 4 spots. Dropping everything you're doing and being like, let's just lather like retinols and salicylic acid on it, like
All the
something just to
ingredients.
burn it away. Understanding that the weather changes, your hormone changes, your emotional state, lack of sleep. Nothing's wrong with the products, the diet. The products are fine. And actually, if I just give it time, it will pass. Just keep doing what I'm doing, maybe make one small change, keep doing what I'm doing as far as skincare is concerned, and reflect on all the other things happening in life, rather than chucking everything in the bin and wanting to like find the holy grail product that will now cure this thing. Skin will do its thing.
Yeah.
You'll be doing great, it'll ebb and it will flow, but just give it time.
That's such good advice, because it can be so disheartening if you're in a really good routine and you're thinking, I'm doing well, my skin's looking good, and then something is a bit off, you haven't slept, or you've got a breakout, you're like, no. But just stick with those ingredients.
Stick with it.
Carry on.
Stick with it. Look at everything. Are you really stressed at that point in time? And actually, that's the reason. And actually, just giving yourself time to calm emotionally, it will settle.
I try and educate clients to not go for the highest percentage of anything straight away. I think that, again, where people kind of look at their skin and kind of think it's something to be fixed. There's things there to be fixed. And, you know, people go, well, say, for example, they were going to choose a vitamin C and they've heard or read that 20% is a maximum percentage you can have in vitamin C. They want 20%. Or
that seems a lot.
Or they've heard that, it is a lot, and it can be very it can be an irritant to the skin at that level as well. Or they've heard that tretinoin is better than an over-the-counter retinoid. So they go for a tretinoin, which is a prescription product, by the way. You know, but they'll go for that. They'll try and get a prescription for that. And I'm always sort of going, but why have you chosen this? Because you've now chosen a product you can only use once or twice a week. Whereas if you'd gone for maybe an over-the-counter retinol, for example, you may have been able to use that more times a week and actually be able to solve the concern that you have. So I'm always very cautious about when people are just like, I want to start at the highest level. You know, even sometimes when people are having chemical peels, they're like, I want the one. And I'm like, the strongest. My skin can take it.
No.
And it's like the medicine. It has to be the bitter one.
Yeah, it was like, no. That's not my philosophy. My philosophy is, I'm like one of the most chilled people in skincare. So, I'm always like, I think you've chosen the wrong practitioner, because any practitioner worth their salt is going to be like, no, we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up, or we start at the middle, maybe we can tire it downwards, or we can go upwards depending on what we see happening. You know, and I always say when people ask for tret, and I tell them what tret is, and I say, you have to have some kind of severe case of acne, and then I say, trust me, I will send you to a dermatologist if I think you need it. So I'm always very mindful of when people just want to go ham, and I'm like, there's just no need. You're going to cause yourself more problems.
Low and slow.
Start low, go slow. That's our motto.
And then build up to it.
Build up.
Yeah. That's very sensible. And then people wonder why they have a huge reaction and then think, I can never use that ingredient again. Maybe they'd gone with the slightly less.
Or worse, they tell everybody else, that product is terrible. And I'm like, the product isn't terrible. I would say vast majority of issues that people have with product is down to user error, not the actual product itself. So, you know, and then it's the bad mouthing that happens. And I'm like, poor product, poor brand.
Poor brand, it's actually really good.
It's really
going
good.
on TikTok now.
Well, speaking of TikTok, I was going to ask, are there any trends that you've seen that you've thought, I would never do that, this is the worst practice? Where do people even come up with these trends? Or I've seen a lot of videos.
I've seen so many.
Yeah,
I've seen so many.
I tend to ignore significantly. I think a lot of them are done to go viral.
Yeah, it's for a reaction.
For reaction. Slugging was a trend. I don't know if that still exists.
What's slugging?
Slugging is using like an oil or some sort of
petrolatum or Vaseline.
Occlusive all over the face. And whilst there's some skin types it works fine for, and there's good reason for it, you know, when you have someone who maybe is an oilier, breakout prone skin type, and they're doing the same thing because it's trendy, or, you know, you have glass skin again, which again is just by making the skin look really shiny, or using like 10, 12 products and just like
the 15-step routine.
Again, skincare sprawl. I'm like, so much you could be doing with that time, and you're in the bathroom for hours on end, probably upsetting your skin more than it needs to be upset. You know, whatever the issue you had, you probably now made it 10 times worse. So yeah, the trends come and go, but I always say good basic skin advice stands the test of time.
There's so many. I think the one that I've seen recently is the bicarbonate of soda on the face.
Oh wow!
And in the hair. And in the hair.
And in the hair.
And in the hair.
What is that supposed to do?
It's supposed to scrub the scalp. For the skin, I guess it's an exfoliant. You know, they want to scrub. So that's one that's an absolute no. Also the lemon on the face, lemon in the underarms.
Yeah.
Oh, I've heard about it. Yes.
Yeah.
Lemon in the
That's
underarms.
like an old wives'
This is a proper old wives' tale that can cause a lot of issues. So don't do that. But there are some, you know, every now and then there's a skin trend, and that I think it's taking something that's old and bringing it back, or at least bringing light to something. So sometimes I'll be like, oh, this is terrible. And I'll often use my socials to try and, like, in a very positive, nice, kind way. I try not to shame anybody, but in a nice, kind way, being like, okay, well, you know, we had the glycolic acid, black skin can't use glycolic acid. That went round for a while, which wasn't true. So, you know, and we both addressed that on socials in a nice, kind way that, you know, yes, we can. You don't have to be afraid of this. You don't have to be afraid
you're reacting to like so-and-so's had this done. And Dr. Ifeoma's like with the cap cut, and you're like, will I have this done? You're like, no.
Whilst my videos are just like, why? I'm literally like, can you just not do that again? To the point where I just stopped reacting. I'm just like, no.
What's going on?
No, we're not doing this today. So I love the fact that you exist, and you. Yeah. I always say to all the aesthetic doctors and derms that do like lots of reaction videos, I'm always like, more power to you, because I signed out.
But sometimes you have to, especially when it's gaining a lot of traction. So when I see a video with misinformation and it's getting like 20,000 views, 30,000 views, 40,000 views, it starts to become, people start to really believe it. And what I found is that after a while in my clinic, I'd see my patients coming in doing that very thing because they'd seen it. So at that point, I'm like, okay, no, I need to put something out there that says that this isn't true, or this isn't real, or here's how to do the thing. Otherwise, it becomes fact. After a while, like that glycolic thing it was becoming fact. Millions and millions, I think it got to like 100 million people start to believe it's true. So you have, no matter how uncomfortable it is sometimes, you've got to be out there to say, okay, here's the actual information, here's how you do the thing. At least people can have some options, and then you have to be discerning as to, you know, what are the credentials of the person saying this? You know, what training have they had?
And often, especially on like TikTok, I find it is just someone who doesn't have any training. They're not a dermatologist, they're not a specialist. They're just someone who's experimenting.
Yes.
And then people see that and think, oh, I could do that too.
And say, it works for me. Look at my glass skin. You can do it too. But, you know, they have different skin type, different skin concerns, different ethnicity, different age.
Different everything.
And they're not even using that product anyway.
Oh, that's the other thing. They're not even using
that
it.
Product.
Well, they're using so many other things. I think that is something to always bear in mind. And I guess where we have Black Skin Directory, we use Black Skin Directory then as the response. But yeah, and that goes, like, we'll do the same thing or signpost to people like Dr. Ejikeme. Whilst on like me personally, I'm just like, look, you need to choose a ministry. You need to follow that ministry.
Choose one and stick to it.
Pick one and stay there. But also in regards to, you know, looking at people's credentials, there needs to be some level of, not only when you look at people's credentials, how long have they been doing the thing that they say they're doing? Because it's very easy for someone to get a certification now and say, oh, look at me, I'm a beauty therapist, or I'm an esthetician, or I'm this, that, and the other. It's very, very easy for people to do that now and seeing skin and spending hours treating skin and talking to women and hearing their concerns and physically looking at skin, putting your fingers and hands and touching and all of that is a very different thing to just saying, I have a certificate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so true.
You need time.
Critical thinking, do research. Okay, I wanted to quickly ask about SPF. So how important is it that everyone wears it every day, especially if you've got melanin in your skin?
We get asked so much, and I think it needs to be said that, okay, black skin needs sunscreen. Just say it quickly, because it just needs to be said. We've spent so long talking about hyperpigmentation because it is probably the number one concern in all its different forms for black and mixed heritage skin. Now, what can you do to prevent mottled pigmentation, DPN, which are those little Morgan Freeman little dots, dark marks around the mouth, hyperpigmentation on the lips, dark marks on the temples, you know, some people call it sunburn, but worsening melasma, dark circles around the eyes. What is the one thing that you can do that you can predictably reduce this over time? Sunscreen. And, you know, the elephant in the room is that, you know, every now and then mixed heritage and black skin does get skin cancer. It is not as common as Caucasian, but do we want to be that one in I don't know how many? We do not want to be that person. It is there. It's possible. And the other thing, they say, oh, but my ancestors, they didn't wear sunscreen. Yeah. And I think, my
dad always says that. And I'm like, just put it on. Just please put it on.
So there's a couple things. What was the average age of life expectancy for the ancestors? It was about 30s. And, you know, we want to be living into our 80s, 90s, and 100, but we don't want to look like, you know, a Dalmatian, like mottled. We want to be even. And even skin tone signifies health. And for everybody, vivacity, youthful skin, but healthy skin. And so neglecting sunscreen is guaranteed to lead to some predictable changes in your skin. And one of those things is accelerated skin aging. And in black skin, that is saggy skin. So we don't wrinkle, but we sag, we sallow, and we fade. So the pigment becomes mottled. And also, yes, our melanin does give some protection. That's great. And we're so thankful of that. But if you live in the diaspora, like you live in the UK, it doesn't behave in the same way as if you were living in Jamaica or in Nigeria. It doesn't. Because after a while, your melanin doesn't behave in the same way. You may look as brown, but it doesn't behave in the same way. So when we get one day of sun, you can get burnt. As opposed to if you had little bits of sun, you lived in a country that your melanin behave in a slightly different way, you're less likely to get sunburnt as well.
Is that because of the exposure to the sun? So in the UK, obviously we don't have as much daylight as other places.
Yes, and also our melanin, we have lots of what's called eumelanin. So eumelanin makes your skin browner, pheomelanin makes your skin more orangey, but it doesn't behave in a certain way. We don't have as much spread of it. So when you go out in the sun, you often notice people say, I get tanned immediately. Yeah, and that's your melanin going to the surface and spreading to protect you. But that takes time.
I'd add to that is, given the plethora of skincare products and ingredients we use nowadays, especially at-home skincare, you might be using a retinoid, you might be using an alpha hydroxy acids, you know, doing some sort of, whether it be salicylic acid, benzoyl peroxide, whatever ingredients you're using at home. All of those things are going to sensitize your skin to some extent. So there's no point using all of those sorts of ingredients, or even your pigment fading ingredients. No point using them if you're not going to use sunscreen as well.
That's right.
You know, so you have to bear that in mind. And then if we go back to the question of ancestors, well, there's a lot of people back in the day not using the products we're using now.
Correct, yeah.
So therefore,
true.
their sort of exposure to sensitivity from the sun wouldn't have been as that high as well. And when I look at people back home in Sierra Leone and Nigeria, people generally try and avoid the sun as well.
That's true. That's true.
You know, they're not out there lying in the sun. People who maybe work outdoors and whatnot, who for maybe economical reasons can't afford to kind of be like, I'm in an office with an air conditioner, or I'm going to go sit on my veranda with shade.
Yeah.
Generally, people will naturally try and avoid the sun as well. I notice like my behaviours when I'm on holiday somewhere hot and sunny, I'm not out there at 12 o'clock.
Yeah,
No.
that's so
No,
interesting.
that's true.
I
Yeah.
wonder if there's a study to show like the skin of black people in the UK compared to black people in those places that you've mentioned, and how their skin damage differs in the
Yeah.
places where they get so much sun and we get barely any. Because
I think that would be great because it will settle this debate to some extent.
Yeah.
But again, I always finish off with know your own skin.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
No point harping on about
That's
what people were
true.
doing in
Yes.
Yeah.
1960 or
Yeah.
people who live in Nigeria don't do this.
It's so true.
What's your skin telling
What's
you?
your skin
yeah,
telling
yeah.
you?
SPF every day.
Every day.
And do you have any favorite brands?
Oh,
I mean, I have a
list.
few. I always have a
Yeah.
few in rotation. Biore, Aqua Rich.
Oh, we love that.
I love
Nice.
that.
Yeah.
La Roche-Posay, Anthelios UV Moon 400. Ultraviolet, Supreme Screen.
Really good.
nice.
Yeah.
Love that. I've just got into the Mecca Cosmetics sort of share makeup base kind
Yes,
of
Nice.
I've
ones.
tried
The
that
one
one.
Nice.
tube.
Yeah.
I like that too. A brand that I love but we don't have in the UK is Hyperskin. They're American, based out of New York, and they just released a beautiful sunscreen that's
Really nice.
kind of got like a light veil to it. On the body, Super Goop, Ultra
Super
Sun.
Goop Unseen.
I love
Love
Ultra
Super Goop
Yeah.
Unseen. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, where possible, I mean, and also I'm very lucky in my job that I get to have access to some of these products.
Yeah.
But where possible, I would say having a little bit of a sunscreen wardrobe, depending on what activity you're doing. Not everything's going to work for every single activity. Sometimes you might want to wear makeup over it.
Yes.
You know, so have a few different options that you can use. I also think some of the high street sunscreens are great, like Sultan, Nivea for the children. I think they're
with
all
the
great.
roll-on.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're all
Love
fantastic.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I second all of these. And I think
That was a great.
It was a great list.
That was such a very like
Such a
mix
great
of
list.
price points and brands.
you had
Yeah.
you had all of mine. The only two others that I have there, which is the Shiseido,
Yes.
the Shiseido, the little blue, that's
the
great
stick.
as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the Beauty MDX is brilliant too. But every single one of the sunscreens that we've mentioned don't leave a white cast. They're not sticky or tacky, and all of the ones you mentioned as well. If you have slightly oily skin, they're also okay.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that having that wardrobe, I love that idea of having an SPF wardrobe.
Yeah, I love that.
Because some days you want to be more shiny and some days you need to be more matte. And you're not going to put your facial sunscreen all over your body. so,
Exactly.
so you need
It's
to have
expensive.
one that's like the
Yeah.
big ones. And the high streets are really good for that. When I go on holiday, I'll often take the Sultan. And for the kids, the
nice
Nivea.
roll-on.
It's when you just go for anything, you put it on, it's like white.
Yeah.
and you're
Yes.
fighting with it.
As I call casket ready.
Yeah, you're fighting with it and you're late. And now it's like, now I have to just manage this with
Yeah.
makeup.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a whole mess. So if you have some staples that you have and you like, then you're never going to be in that situation.
Okay, we haven't talked about Tweakments, and this is such a huge industry on its own. What are some of your favourite Tweakments that you recommend to some of your clients?
So my aesthetic is less is more, natural results. And if somebody can see it, that is not my work.
I love that. Okay.
So for me, it needs to be invisible. So you on your best day as opposed to an altered version of you. So things that are great, hyaluronic acid, don't be afraid of it. Dermal fillers for the right person can be brilliant. This can be great to enhance your cheeks, reduce the tear trough, enhance jawlines, chins, temples. Done delicately, brilliant. But right now, things that are absolutely huge, polynucleotides. You may know these as they're made from salmon or trout, and they're there. So the building blocks of our cells are DNA, these are nucleotides, tiny nucleotides. So you pop them into the skin, you inject them or microneedle into the skin, and they can be great for the under eyes is one area that, incredible. Another treatment I'm loving right now, especially with skin of color, is the Smart Pico.
Oh, I've not heard of this one.
Yeah, so it's a laser. It's like the Ferraris of Picos. It's a very, very fast laser. And that's important because it goes into and out of the skin really fast using sound and light. So you know if you're in a really loud concert, you're not going to hyperpigment. And if there's bright light that's not the sun, you won't hyperpigment. But if somebody brings a curling iron to your hand, you know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
Heat.
Oh,
So using photoacoustic sound and light as a means to get rid of the pigment is a very smart way, especially if you have a lot of pigment. So it will help to get rid of that island of pigment without addressing or changing your skin tone, which has just been, it's just an incredible technology that is a unique way of using Pico. So it's a laser.
Wow.
So these are some of the treatments that right now are doing really well. But some people are afraid of things like Botox, botulinum toxin type A. Again, you should be able to move. You should be able to frown, smile, smile, squint. Yeah. And it can be done that it respects your ethnicity, it respects your anatomy. You can have lovely results.
I love that, yeah. So you look like you, but just slightly
just take the
more
edge off.
fresher
A spruced version. Yeah.
Zhuzh.
A little zhuzh. Don't be afraid of a zhuzh.
Love that. Dija, what about you? Some of your favourite treatments?
Well, I don't do any injectables or anything like that, but personally, my favourite treatments, I love a sprinkle of Botox, just around the forehead, quite good for me. Just take the edge off. As I always say, take the edge off. In the winter months, I love things like Profilo for extra moisture into the skin. I haven't tried polynucleotides yet. I personally don't feel I have any need for them.
Yeah, you look good.
So I've not tried them. I'm very much like, what do I need?
Yeah.
Yes, not what you
rather
want to try.
than trying
want,
lots of things. Botox, yes. Profilo, yes. Those are my go-tos.
Yeah, I hear so many things about Profilo. It sounds like
it's great.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
free
I call it
hyaluronic
injectable
acid.
moisturiser.
Yeah, it's literally free hyaluronic acid. Yeah.
Okay, should we do some quick fire questions?
Oh yes, let's do it.
Okay, so these are questions from our readers, I should say.
Okay.
So someone has asked, what at-home skin tool is worth the investment?
I'm gonna say one. I'm gonna say one.
Okay, yes.
Okay, go
on, Ifeoma, you've got something exciting.
So I'm going to tell you the one that I like, that I've been researching for about 2 years, and it's LED masks.
Yes.
And I believe
would
in them
agree.
so much that I made my own Dija.
Woohoo!
I did. I spent the last 2 years looking at loads of different devices,
Yeah.
and some are good, and some weren't so good, and some follow the evidence, and some didn't. Oh, it's coming
We've got
in.
it
We got it
here.
here.
Wow.
We got it here. This is my
Thank
little
you.
new baby.
So by the time that this goes out,
wait.
this will be
This
on
will
the
be
market.
out. This will be
Yes.
out. So it's called Skin, with a Z, and it's for me it's best in class because it follows just the evidence. It does none of the nonsense, no gimmicks, no lights that don't work. So you should only be looking for red and blue light. If you have a mask that has anything else, just don't bother using it because there's no evidence behind it. And near infrared is something else that's really important because it kind of turbocharges your LED. So we've done loads of really interesting things like eye goggles and making it simple to use and adding near infrared and low light spectrum for darker skin so that it means that it's safe for all skin types. It's CE marked, which again makes it extremely safe, and lots of LED masks don't have that. So yeah, LED masks.
Amazing! Congrats! I can't honestly. Everything. It just.
I know.
It sounds amazing. I can't really get across, enough how much you two are the leaders in the industry. So if you have your own product, this is something you can genuinely trust.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to make an LED mask. I wasn't trying to start a clinic, to be honest. It was done out of frustration. The clinic started out of frustration, and this was born out of frustration as well.
You've always been very interested in LED.
Yes,
It's always been your thing.
It's just, we
So it
use it
makes
in the
sense.
clinic, we believe it in the clinic, we use it after all our invasive devices. We have patients that come in from elsewhere who have burns, and it's part of our burns protocol. We actually published about a lady that had a really bad burn on her forehead, and using LED, we really, really helped her. Oh, wow. So it's something that I believed in a long time, but just because the technology is good doesn't mean the device is good. You have to make sure that it has certain criteria to make sure that you are happy to use it safely on your skin.
Amazing. And where can people find this?
You can find it on the website, Ayodele Medical Clinic, and you can find it at Skin Hub. You can get it straight from there as well.
Amazing. Can't wait.
I want all the details. All the details.
Okay, next question. Somebody has said, what's the one skincare product you can't live without?
Oh, God, it's such a hard question. But for me, I'd probably say, if I think about something I've been using forever and ever and ever and ever, it'll be the Cosmetics Beauty Clean Cleanser, which is a lactic acid-based cleanser. I pretty much have been using that for about 15 years.
Wow, I've not tried that one. That sounds good.
Very good. Floritin by SkinCeuticals.
Oh yeah, I hear so many things about
This is an antioxidant. It's just a great antioxidant, helps to even out skin tone, helps to reduce blemishes. I love it.
Adds to basket. Somebody has also said, how often can I safely exfoliate my skin?
It really depends on your skin type and what your skin concerns are. It's one of those questions that it depends. But I would say somewhere between 1 to 3 times a week. Okay. And also depends what are you using as an exfoliant. For example, I use Cosmetics Purity Skin Cleanser, which is a lactic acid, low level, but I use that pretty much once a day. So I can get away with that because I know my skin. So it really depends. It's not an easy question to answer. It's like, what's your skin telling you?
So see what works for you. Another question. Laser hair removal, is this a big no-no for darker skin types?
No. You can use laser hair removal. Don't be afraid of laser hair removal. Just make sure that if you're thinking about it, there are a few things to think about. Go with an ND-YAG. If you're not sure or you're not sure about the place, just make sure it's an ND-YAG. That's the safest darker skin. And then make sure that the person who's doing it, ask the questions. How many people have you treated that look like me? How many legs or whatever arms have you done? And that's a great question because of it's like not kind of like me, but looks like me.
Yep.
Yeah. And if something goes wrong, what would you do? It's another good question. And things sometimes go wrong, and it's not necessarily the practitioner's fault or the laser's fault. Sometimes things go wrong. And if you spot it early, it doesn't have to stay wrong. There's so many quick and easy ways to treat like an early burn or irritation to prevent that hyperpigmentation. So if things go wrong, what would you do? As long as you get good responses to those questions, then go ahead.
We have a ton of information on laser on Black Skin Directory. So even down to things like questions like that, what questions you should be asking before you actually go for laser. Ton of information on the directory.
To do your research first,
for
sure.
First.
If you could have one celebrity's skin, who would it be?
None, really.
None.
No, because a lot of them, like, they don't look like you see them in the magazines.
That's
but
right.
if I was going to pick someone,
That's
I'd probably go for Tracy Ellis Ross because I've seen her up close and I know that her skin is beautiful. It's got some pigmentation because everybody does. It shows where she is in life. She looks after it well. It naturally looks healthy and radiant. So if I was going to choose anybody, it would be her, but I'm good, really. I'm all right.
I mean, if I had your skin, Dija, I would also be like, none. Ifeoma,
Oh, nobody. No, I wouldn't take anybody.
Again,
I want my own skin. I'm happy with my own skin. My skin's been on a journey and I understand my skin. We have our ups and downs, but I wouldn't trade it. I like my face. I wouldn't trade it.
You can appreciate other people's skin, but...
So many gorgeous. You know who else has lovely skin and I've seen up close? Alicia Keys.
Yeah,
and her skin has gone through its journey.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure if you asked her that question, she'd pick someone else because if she's had such a journey with her skin, but now look at it.
Very, very last question. What's the best piece of skincare advice you've ever been given?
I would say lifestyle. Look after my lifestyle, really. Fresh air, eat well, eat a colourful diet. Don't stress about it. Keep your stress low. Drink water. Look after yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that reflects in your skin outwardly as well. Yeah.
Love that.
Say throw away the mag glass. That magnifying glass, just smash it, throw it away. I think looking at your skin like that will give anybody a complex.
Yeah, those are horrible.
They're
see
horrible.
every single pore, blemish,
they will give. And if that's your mirror that you spend every morning looking at, you will get a complex over time. Spend more time looking at the things that you like about your face rather than things that you don't like. And if something starts to become an obsession, so if you only see one thing in your face, solve it. Find the solution from it so that you can go back to appreciating your whole face.
Elise, thank you so. Honestly, I could have just gone on for
hours
and hours.
10-part.
Yeah, 10-part. Okay, let's go. Well, thank you so much. But sadly, that's all we've got time for today. But thank you so much, Dija. Ifeoma,
thank
for joining
you.
I
me.
love this woman.
And you two are like genuine friends. This is all the more better as well. All more better for an episode. And thank you so much for listening at home. If you have any feedback at all, please do email us at podcast@sherlock.com. We love hearing from you. Don't forget to rate, review, and please do subscribe because it really helps us out. But that's it for now. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.